Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Full Contact Podcast. I am Dean. I'm joined today by the podcast Papa Bear Bob. Thank you for joining us. What is exactly the American dream?
Well, it's a cultural phrase, so it will change over time, and certainly different people will have their own version of it. But it has its origins, I believe, in the 30s. There was a book written, and it was referring to the fact that in America, you're not tied down by the family, the class that you were born into. So there weren't the landowner class, the peasant class, that sort of thing, worker class, the royalty class. In other words, you could build your life and do whatever you want. In the, I don't know if it's the 50s and 60s, but the boomer age, it came to mean, really be defined as own a house, two cars, family, that kind of thing. Classifying someone as a boomer by the year they were born doesn't really work very well because the first half of the boomer generation, I'm a late boomer. Okay. So, and it's true of any generation. If you're born at the very end of one generation, the beginning of the other, most likely you're going to be more of the next generation. So the world I grew up in was mostly the Generation X world.
Right.
So I was at the tail end of the boomer. This idea of you get a job, life's easy, and this idyllic lifestyle wasn't my experience. The second half, or maybe the last 15 years of the boomer generation, someone actually renamed it the Joneses generation. When I was coming of age, I was in high school. The whole Rust Belt was collapsing. We live in Pittsburgh. That was the lifeblood of the working class, and all the mills were closing. People were moving away. We still to this day have the Pittsburgh diaspora, the Steeler fans that show up in games all around the country. That's because they scattered in the late 70s when, their livelihood just fell apart. They lost their jobs. It was the union mill worker. That's what this area was built on. So that was my experience. And then the 80s, it was, stagflation. I mean, we went through the oil embargo. So it was tough economic times. And they came to be called the Jones generation because sometime in the 80s, it started to turn around. And by the 90s, it was, the economy was booming again with the tech. Mm-hmm. We had lost our jobs to Japan at the time. All the manufacturing jobs had gone to Japan, and the final industry to go really was the steel industry. But all of our electronic manufacturing and products like that were gone. So by the 90s, when the internet was being built, if you will, or being taken advantage of, the technology was all being developed here in the States. So it created sort of a second wave of that, even manufacturing. When China started to sell their cheap labor, essentially, then again, all that manufacturing and things was shifted over to China for competitive cost management. But there was a time there in the 80s where, the phrase was keeping up with the Joneses. And, it was sort of a cultural trend, but a cautionary tale that, it's just because your neighbor buys a new car, you don't have to buy a new car. But that was sort of the trend. So the part of the boomer generation I grew up in was really, it's been called the Jones generation. So that's pretty long.
Yeah. It's a very long-winded way of saying basically, I don't want to say too much like of a materialism kind of way, but I think the best way, I think that from what I'm gathering, from what you said, to summarize it is everybody just wants to be able to live their life and have some of like the better stuff, and basically material equaled out to happiness.
Right.
It was
No,
like
it was very materialistic. Mm-hmm. It was a hyper individualist, materialist. Get your piece of the pie. You can do it. Even the phrases in the marketing of products and things was capturing it. Mm-hmm. But so the American dream was really sort of about that, to build bigger and to build a bigger and better life. And it was always a sense that you wanted to build a life better than your parents had. Mm-hmm. because a lot of us grew up in, the tough working class. We didn't want that kind of life. So that was the American dream, the last that I knew of it. Make a life for yourself, achieve a level of comfort, financial independence. It was definitely about material possessions, big, not just a house, but a bigger house, a better house, in a better neighborhood, that sort of thing.
I'm towards the end of the millennial time into the Gen Z time. I would say, at least in like the wanting of developing a better life and having some material, hasn't really changed very much. But I feel like there's been slightly a bit of a shift in value. Now, I've noticed a lot within my generation that, and I don't have the exact statistics.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I think the desires and the wants are the same. I think they're somewhat universal. But the thing that makes it the American dream is the sense that it's achievable.
Yeah.
That there's a path. There's a clear path to that.
Right.
Or a semi-clear path. There's never been a guaranteed one. But.
No, there's not exactly a how-to manual for life.
So I think what you're saying is that's what's gone, is the sense that there's a clear path to it.
I mean, not only that, but I consider myself a kind of a unique case. I'm not one of those ones that really values the material things when it comes to what determines my quality of life. If anything, I would say more of what I've noticed in my generation, we tend to value experiences more than material things themselves. I would personally say I would value the times I get to spend with family, with my friends, doing the various little things, like us even doing a podcast, for example. That type of experience is more valuable to me than any one little piece of thing. Like I said in our first episode, I'm quite happy living quite minimalistic. I don't really want or need for much. And quite honestly, if I sold off a lot of the stuff that I own, maybe minus a few things that are necessary for life, I would still be able to find happiness. And if anything, I would actually have less of a financial burden to be able to go out and experience things. One of the big things that I've noticed a lot, that I've known just from talking and with people in my generation, a lot of us have put a lot of value in wanting to get out there and travel, to see the world in different ways, experience new things, because we're not saying that we have an issue with buttoning down and working hard, because we have no problem working hard despite what the older generations might say about us.
Right.
But we value those that hard work to go more towards those types of experiences. And I think one of the biggest gripes of my generation, it feels like sometimes that is a little bit harder to achieve just based off of things that are going on. But also at the same time, it really depends on what exactly do you want.
Well, I would disagree on the sometimes and the little. I mean, I think it's a widespread sentiment, and I think it's much harder. I think that's the sense out there. You value experiences more. There were two things I heard. One was, the second thing you talked about was going on a vacation. So it's like, if you have money, rather than buy, a thing, you would like to spend that money on creating an experience and a memory. That's something that usually I've found kicks in when people get older. At the end of life, they interview people that are, hospice. What do they wish they would have done differently? And one of the top things was travel. It was what you mentioned, travel. It was relationships. They regretted, strained relationships with family and things like that. So in a sense, you guys are kind of farther ahead with that.
I mean, yes, but that also kind of comes with its own unique counter consequences. One thing that I believe there's plenty of statistics to back it up. As the new generations progress, it starts to be noticed that especially in my generation, we are getting married less. We are having less children.
Right.
In the pursuit of being able to have those experiences. Now, that's not everybody. There's still plenty out there that still have those families early. Some of them maybe not, just because life just hasn't, like for myself, life just hasn't thrown that at me just yet. But I definitely see that a lot of people in my generation say that they would rather get some experiences out of the way first, get a decent amount of money saved up, and
Right.
then go into the level of settling down and raising the next generation.
That's a good point. There's a bit of a dichotomy there, right? So, I mean, the other piece of that I was going to mention was you mentioned you'd rather spend time with family, which really doesn't cost money. That to me is like a work-life balance. So you value with your money, using your money for experiences, and even your time, rather than exchanging your time for money. There's a limit to that. You want to be able to enjoy your life and have, a work-life balance.
Yeah.
So, and a bit of a dichotomy, I guess, is so then why aren't people getting married? It's I do hear that about it being a practical consideration. I want to first establish my career. I want to first establish these things before I get married. In some sense, that's good. I mean, in some sense, that seems practical and pragmatic. But I come, my time and the people before me, we tended to just the first thing you did was get married, and then you built a life together. You didn't try to build one independently. And I mean, quite frankly, yeah, we struggled a lot when we first got married. In fact, when I talked about the 1960s, you mentioned dirt poor. We didn't believe we were poor, and I think in the context of the time, I don't really think we were either. That was just my parents were in their 20s, and they were just getting working class, just getting started. My mother obviously didn't work. Mothers didn't work then. But yeah, so we weren't poor. We were just working class. We couldn't. We lived as a kid. I just knew we lived in a different place, in a different house, and drove different cars than I saw on TV. But no, we didn't. We never once considered. At that time, there was a phrase. It's on the movie, a show, the movie A Christmas Story, when the kid wasn't eating his food. They're starving kids in China that would love to have that. That was literally a common phrase said to kids. It was said to me many times.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, to us, we weren't poor. There were the people that didn't have food and clothing. They were poor.
I mean, I feel like you guys did try to throw that phrase at us from time to time, but I don't think with us you really had much of a problem with us eating our food minus one or two specific items.
Those things tend to die off. But so, yeah, I mean, do you think that's the main reason people are delaying marriage is because of just financial career?
It's from what at least on an optics sense, that's what it appears like to me. Now, everybody's situation is unique. Take myself, for example. I honestly thought that I was going to be married at the very least by now, if not at least had a kid or maybe at least one on the way or maybe even two. Unfortunately, just for me, it just hasn't worked out like that. I just haven't been able to lock down whoever that individual might be. I might just be a unicorn in that case. I guess it's just on individual basis. Like my best friend, for example, he was married and had his first daughter by the time he was 22. So it really just depends.
Sometimes I'm not sure how much media influence culture and culture influences media, but there was a trend there that you saw in TV shows and in movies where the mother especially would sacrifice her life that she really wanted to live. Like she wanted to be a dancer, or she wanted to be a journalist, but she spent all of her time being a mother and a parent, a wife. So they were in the stories that they were telling, it was always nothing but a positive when the mother would just leave that and go pursue her dream. That kind of a thing. And sometimes they would find balance. So, again, sometimes that's activism, social political activism showing up in Hollywood, which we see quite often. And that starts to formulate people's subconsciously, even their view of what's important in things. I don't know. It's a chicken and egg for me. I don't know where, if that started in the culture and they caught it, but I tend to think it was them influencing culture.
I mean, I definitely 100%, and we literally see it influence culture every day. I mean, you made mention in our first episode about how media, especially liberal media, pretty much takes up about 90% of the influence in society about right at this point.
Well, sure, and that's 90% of Hollywood and everything else. Yeah,
and I mean, I will say from my own experience, I have noticed that a lot of that influence has in some way possibly played a role in my inability to be able to lock down having a wife and starting a family right now. It's like, especially it was like a lot of them wanted to get careers started and they wanted to have their own level of self-importance, and I'm not knocking them for that. I mean, everybody, you have to do what you got to do to make yourself happy, but everything comes at a cost too. I mean, you got to think, especially like when it comes to women, they have a kind of a finite amount of time to where they're going to be able to healthily have a child with minimal risk. Whereas us men, we could literally squirt out kids until we're almost dead. So I don't know. I think like a lot of that influence has really kind of promoted them to try to seek their own level of significance and happiness, which, I'm not knocking them. Everybody, there's a great sense of pride that comes in chasing your dreams, and I'm never going to knock anybody for that. However, I feel like it has very greatly pushed the boundary of where they put almost too much focus on that and forget to lean back and be like, okay, well, I do want to start a family. I can try to accomplish as much as I can, but I also got to put value and time towards this.
Right.
And it even starts getting to a point where a lot of them just don't want to have kids or family because they don't want to be held down and what they consider to be controlled by the stigma of, oh, I got to be a mother. Oh, I got to be a caretaker. Why do I have to do that?
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of they don't want to accept the responsibility, which we both know whenever you start a family, responsibility comes on both ends. You got the provider and the caretaker. It's a matter of which one's going to be which.
Right. Well, I mean, so affordability plays into it. One of the articles I found talks about what the new definition of the American dream is, and they found that there were two groups of people among younger, probably 30 and under, 35 and under, that sort of thing. And there was the opportunity model and the stability model, and they were like 50-50. So the opportunity model are people that believe the American dream would focus on individual freedom and self-reliance, trusting that hard work yields rewards. And that's not necessarily hard work working for someone. That's the grind, doing your own side hustles or your own business. Starting a business and running a business is a big deal in this group of people, a high priority. And they believe in sort of systemic fairness over government aid. So rather than, government coming in, they just want the system to be fair so that everybody has a fair chance, to succeed. They don't want anyone holding them down. So, like government aid. Government aid, out of one hand, can help people, but out of the other hand, it's taking that money from somebody else. So, those are those people: individual freedom and self-reliance, hard work, probably their own business, and systemic fairness is more important than government aid. The other group are in the stability model, stability-minded. Now, I think I've learned that women more fall into the security and the stability, at least historically, model. So that's, like with mom, not having a mortgage is a big deal. Even if financially your interest rate's low, you'd be better off keeping the mortgage and putting your money. No, I just don't want that mortgage, that sort of thing. So they focus on basic financial peace of mind, a stable income that covers the essentials, and low debt, manageable fixed bills, and emergency protection. So it's security, it's stability. Two groups of people about 50-50 seem to fall into that.
I mean, it's kind of funny whenever you look at that. It's almost like you almost just completely described our political spectrum right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
So I guess it really just boils down to like the American dream itself has, I guess, those at its core.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think it envelops literally so many different things. And it being that diverse, I mean, it can be a good thing, but also at the same time, depending on how polarized your view on what that American dream is, starts to create friction in it. So that's going to segue into, I guess, my next question for you, and that is, though we can both agree that the American dream is not dead, do you feel that it is more at risk now versus what it was even 20, 30 years ago? Or are we potentially even in really grave danger of the American dream completely dying off?
I would say I just read those two groups, and I'm just spitballing here, but I would say the opportunity model, the small business minded, opportunity to succeed. I would probably put them more on the pro America. I think the dream is alive. I think everybody still has a dream and a life that they want to build. But whether they associate that with a certain level of patriotism or pride in America, makes this dream possible. I think the opportunity model probably falls under that. Where the stability model, I think they're looking more towards these are all the problems. Look how bad everything got, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they're seeing it as the American dream. Like maybe I see a lot of stuff online, the anti-boomers, and they caused this problem. They did this by A, B, C, and D. They ruined the environment. They ruined the economy. They did it. So I would say that, that group is probably not calling it the American dream. They would probably say the American dream is the problem, and we need a new dream.
That is a great point for me to kind of bring this up, because where my stance on it is again, I believe it is still alive and well, and I do agree that those individuals that you're talking about I would say that those individuals themselves not being able to find a good balance is what's potentially putting the American dream at risk. It actually kind of ties into, which we both can agree, a lot of those people that lean on that model tend to favor more Marxist levels of ideology. Taking it back to this is back in.
Where do you think they got that?
Well, I mean, Marxism has been an ongoing thing for even dating back to as far back as the Industrial Revolution. Now, when it comes to how it's encompassing within America, it really starts dating back even to like the Soviet Union, whenever they really were trying to actively push their beliefs into us. So this happened back when more in your day, but I like to make mention of it. Back in '87, with G. Edward Griffin, there was an individual by the name of Yuri Bezmenov. He was a former KGB informant, also was a journalist, and he defected to the United States, or at least to the West, in 1970. He went on that show where he gave in great detail a strategy by the Soviet Union of basically indoctrinating Marxism within American culture. And he called it ideological subversion.
The thing you mentioned from the Yuri guy, talking about how the KGB was trying to spread this thinking in the United States, it's wide open now with social media.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, these media platforms are just filled with people that are literally being paid to post things just the other day on X, there was someone, I see someone who said, well, my uncle doesn't understand, he bought his house in such and such a time and he made $6.50 an hour, well, that sort of thing, right? And it was well written, it was succinct. So basically, I answered it. If your uncle's not being helpful, don't talk to your uncle. But rather than worry about that, shouldn't you be asking yourself how you can move ahead in today's world? That sort of thing. So a helpful pose, right? Well, about a day later, someone else pointed out to me it's a bot account in Nigeria.
That's hilarious.
And sure enough, it was. It was clearly, a paid account to spread discontent, and who knows? I don't know who's paying them. But that's the reality. So as far as the KGB back then, I mean, the enemy's not at the gates, if you want to use a metaphor, but the enemy's all right here. It's in our pocket every day.
It's literally right here. The enemy is right here, and it's the one thing that, as a society, we literally cannot function without.
Two things contributed to the widespread acceptance, I believe, of a Marxist, socialist, even communist ideas today. One is that they propagated them through the educational system. It was higher education. And if you think about it, I mean, these are people, they're like, people that think, people that read. They live in the world of theory. When I worked in, industry, it was known that what was the saying? Those that can do, those that can't teach. Okay, so just because you know something in theory doesn't mean that it's good in practice. Now that saying has kind of gone by the wayside because, especially here in Pittsburgh, a lot of great technology startups have come out of like CMU. In fact, I've worked for some of them, so that's changing. But my point being, those people are real susceptible to these ideas, these revolutionary ideas, and quite frankly, socialism, communism. The promises are real. Seem compassionate. We're going to help you. We're going to make everybody equal. Everybody's going to be fair. You're not going to have all these disparities. The promise and the reality are two different things. I say it's like heroin. Heroin's very euphoric, from what I'm told, in the beginning. But after a while, it becomes, real sickness and, it just multiplies suffering tenfold.
Oh yeah,
like hundredfold. So it'll ruin your life essentially, and that's what you have to be careful with some of these communist and socialist ideas. The promise is there, so you have people that are truly struggling, looking for answers. You've got a bunch of Americans like me who are there telling them, just hunker down and work harder. I did it, just do it like I did. The world's different, economically vastly different than it was when you were a kid, coming. So that's not helpful. But then the people that are helping, it's like, hey, they're blaming rich people. They're saying, look how much money Elon Musk has. Not that affects you in any way. It doesn't. It's not the cause of your problems, literally. But they use that to promote the jealousy, then to say, we're going to take money from people like Elon Musk and we're going to give you stuff.
But I mean, it's at its core, when you don't take it from a free thinking standpoint, it actually sounds quite nice. Like when you, even just reading on like some of the core principles of democratic socialism, in theory, it sounds great. And you would think that something like that would work. And, maybe in certain cases it does work. It might work. Like I see a lot of democratic socialism works in areas like ever in Europe, like Sweden, Norway, stuff like that. But also by
define works.
Well, it works as in like people are, I guess, content and things keep going. But if you look at them by comparison economically, America outshines them completely.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about content. I mean, they come up high on these happiness surveys, but did you ever look at do you know, how would you measure human happiness?
That's a great thing because there's no exact way to measure it. It's literally on an individual basis.
When they do these surveys, you look at the questions. And you go, okay, even if I answer all these questions the affirmative, does that really equal happiness? So, I mean, I think that's somewhat deceiving. Well, look, so I was surprised to find out recently Democrat socialism has been around a long time. It's from around 1900.
Right.
As a matter of fact, George Orwell was a democratic socialist. Everybody thinks Orwell was a big free market guy because his, 1984 and Animal Farm seemed to be against, socialism, communism. What they're really against is totalitarianism. So he believed that democratic socialism, a socialism where people could still vote and still have freedoms, not a full blown, USSR type or North Korea type communism, a totalitarian government. So he was trying to expose totalitarian governments to save socialism. He was not anti-socialist. So I was a little surprised to find that out.
I did not know that.
But so, it seems like what a democratic socialist say is, okay, we obviously democratic, there's going to be elections and we're going to vote people in. They don't want to take away, they don't want to kill industry. They don't want to seize the means of production, if you will. I mean, I don't know if they're, within that group, I'm sure some may use that rhetoric, but no, they just want to tax it. They want to tax and they want to build more social programs. They want to give health care to everyone, free college, free child care. So if you think about it, those are the things the Democratic Party talks about. They always say, and this has been happening all of my life, they always say that they're going to pay for that by taxing the rich people. Here's the problem. If you do the math, there's not enough money in the rich people to do that.
No.
You may be able, a guy like a Mamdani may be able to, fund some program in New York City, even though it's a big city, it's still just a city. It's not a whole country. There's a lot, 8 million or 10 million versus 330 million. It's a big difference. There is not enough money in the rich people's pockets, if you will, to fund all these programs into perpetuity.
Right.
And especially since once you take away the ability for them to make more money, they're going to leave, or they're going to stop. The incentive to better yourself. I mean, at some point they say, why do they need so much money? At some point, it's just a sign, an affirmation of success. It's like saying it's not, I'm going to buy more stuff. I mean, Elon Musk, I don't think he even owns a house.
I don't know whether he does or not, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me. I feel like he tends to live where he works anymore.
So it's a different mindset. I mean, his most of his wealth is just ownership stake in his companies. And, he said in Tesla, he would not agree to stay on in Tesla if he didn't maintain a control position. He doesn't ever want to be in a position where he has to do what other people tell him to do. Personally, I think he's earned that.
Yeah.
With what he's built. So, that's what his net worth is really all about. It's about him maintaining control of what he built. And a lot of, entrepreneurs do that. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs who start up companies, once they, if they go public, that sort of thing, they either want to maintain control or they want out totally. Buy me out. But usually the people, if you go public, you don't want Elon Musk to leave. What's the future of SpaceX if you take out Elon Musk? The big money investors would say not good. So you don't want him to leave.
No.
And so what you're not just investing in, a building and the employees, thing that you're investing in the totality of the company and its vision for the future. Right. So you don't want an Elon Musk to leave.
No. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of these very wealthy individuals. I mean, look at Jeff Bezos, for example. Still one of the wealthiest men in the world, but if it wasn't for what he was able to build, we wouldn't have a lot of the luxuries that we have right now. Mm-hmm. I bet you every single piece of equipment in this studio, minus maybe a few items, were ordered through Amazon or some type of means of which it like some type of similar thing that gets it to us. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not even just him, but like just as a great example, it's such a common use sort of thing. It's almost essential to your everyday life, depending on what you want to get. I mean, it's almost in its own way single-handedly killing the physical retail business, because you can get everything you want at the touch of a screen and never have to leave your home to get it. And it gets brought directly to you. So you need those types of individuals that have those kinds of mindsets. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I am personally not against them being properly compensated for their efforts, considering they're always continuously funneling back. People like to look at Elon Musk. He brought us Tesla and SpaceX, but it's like people forget that he's done a lot more with that. They forgot that he was key in building PayPal and everything like that. And he started off very small, and they thought that he had like all this money when he first started, but he didn't. He had a success in one field, sold off that, invested into the next one, and so on and so on and so on. And it's just a continuous trend of success, reinvest. Right. And honestly, the big problem is I feel like with a lot of people, especially those that tend to lean on the democratic socialist stuff, because they have yet to find their niche in what they can be successful for, to where they can reinvest it. They want to point fingers and blame, and then are like, okay, well, I'm not happy because you're in this position because you've succeeded. So now I want you now to basically give me reparations.
Well, I mean, that's always been the case, right? The wealthy monarch and the peasants, you know, I mean, eventually the peasants, you know, revolt. So I'm not saying that, wealthy people and it is not a valid issue, I guess, for people that are truly, truly suffering. Mm-hmm. What I caution against is thinking that these national programs, free stuff, is going to be paid for by rich people. It will not. No. The numbers just aren't there. So it always ends up being the middle class, the upper middle class, that's going to bear the burden of and don't forget, this has to be funded every year. Mm. That's the reality. We just have to deal with the reality. And that's what those other countries that you say that, you know, have successfully implemented democratic socialism, look at the reality of it. The reality of it is the people are paying for it, not the rich people. Mm-hmm. The free stuff isn't free for the vast majority of people. Well, it's always been the case.
I kind of look at it as like a trickle-down effect. You start off with the billionaires, and then, okay, you squeeze them completely dry. All right, now you're on to the millionaires. Okay, you squeeze them dry, and then it's the 100,000ers that are the ones paid for. And then after that, it's going to be someone like me who makes maybe $60,000 to $70,000 a year, and it's just going to go until it completely collapses. There's no way to, in reality, not have the next level down pay for it.
You just have to do the numbers. And you have to consider how many people there are in different income brackets and how much money at that 10% level or whatever they want to call it. If you do the numbers, you'll find that it doesn't work. And even these promises like we're going to tax a wealth tax. So we're going to tax, and Elon Musk is worth $1 trillion. We're just going to tax him 5% of that. Just 5% of that. Well, he doesn't have, most of his money is tied up in his company. So what are you doing? You're forcing him to sell his stock every year to pay that tax?
Basically. And I think that's the other thing. They don't want people like him having control of such things. They want, and that pretty much boils down to what
if we go back to our original topic here, it's about the American dream and the people. Okay, so we're talking from their perspective, right? they're being promised. So the young people that they're struggling. They feel like if I could get free health care, then I could have kids. I could get married and have a kid, and we could both work and we could afford it. This student debt is killing me. Okay, somebody needs to do something about this student debt problem so that I can, pursue my American dream. That's what they're seeing. So that's what they're being promised. We can solve these problems for you. Don't worry about who's going to pay for it because it's all those rich people. And all I'm saying is that's just not true. I mean, if that were true, why did Joe Biden tax people on eBay making $600 transactions? So suddenly, with Joe Biden's executive order, everybody had to file their IRS tax information to their eBay selling account, and if they sold more than $600 worth of merchandise, they had to pay taxes on that.
Mm-hmm.
Are they rich? I mean, you realize before that there was a number, but it was something like 10 or 20,000. I think it was $20,000. So you as a low income person, you could sell, go to thrift stores and sell low end items, sell things that you buy at garage sales, things like that, and you can make a little bit extra money. Now it's real work. You have to package it and ship it and deal with people's complaints and everything. So, but a lot of people said, this is worth it to me to make a little extra money. It was a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe Biden comes along and says, oh, wow, that's unfair. All these people are getting money and they're not paying their tax. Now, why did they set the bar at $600? If the answer is to tax rich people, why is it set to $600? Now, Trump reversed it, so...
Yeah.
It's gone. It's back to 20 grand or whatever it was.
You're welcome.
So, all right.
So I guess I'll segue into this question. So, what is it that you think that needs to be done in order to keep, whether it be the over-encompassing theory of the American dream alive, or at least your version of what the American dream is alive?
No, I would rather help young people to realize their version of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give them my version. I'm not trying to hold, pretend like, the 1980s and 1990s, is still a reality. It's not. We're in 2026.
Right.
It's a whole different ballgame now. So what I would say is two things. When you're looking for free health care, free this, free that, you have to be careful of the long-term consequences of that. And even the short-term reality of whether that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to happen? So I think what everyone should do is look at the reality of the world the way it is now, the economy, everything, the technology, and ask yourself, how can I better myself, advance myself, achieve my goals in this economy that we have right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then if it gets better, that's only the better for you. One of the things that characterizes this economy is it's called there's the asset class and then the wage class, call them that. So asset class are older people like me, who have invested their money over the long term, and now and even a house. So they talk about a house that a boomer bought for, the numbers are always exaggerated, but bought for a little bit of money, and now it's worth a lot of money. And, they won't sell them. So there's some things going on in our economy that mean that people that already have assets, whether it's equities in the stock market, property, even their own home, are at a huge advantage over people just trying to make a living, because those assets are worth a lot more, right? We had a lot of inflation. The wages haven't exactly risen, to the level of inflation. So cash is worth less. But if instead of cash, you had stocks or you had, a house, you'd be in a much better position.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem: stocks don't pay your gas bill and light bill. So I guess the point is, it's like a barrier to entry, if you will, into that version of the American dream, which I guess that's any version of the American dream, because any version of the American dream has to do with finance.
Mm-hmm.
Money plays into it.
And I definitely agree with you on that. Like, I really wish that I could do more investing, like active investing in the stock market, because it's so, let's just say the opportunity is everywhere. The markets are very fluid and you never know exactly what way it's going to go, and has nothing but opportunity in its way. But for me, I was blessed enough to be able to at least invest in a physical asset like property, specifically my house.
Right.
But now, in the position that I'm in right now, based off of what I make and whatnot, and certain other debts that I don't have the ability to invest in other things, in other liquid things like stocks.
Right.
Even though I wish greatly I did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of what do I need to do to get myself to that point where I can do something like that.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's the attitude, Rat.
Well, like, exactly. So
that's the attitude you have to have.
Well,
this is a problem. You acknowledge the problem. I don't deny it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been in that situation too. I know it's very, very hard. You're barely making your bills. You've got some debt, but you didn't stop there. You said, I got to ask myself, how do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get to that point? And there's nothing in the immediate. You can't fix it overnight.
No, and honestly, it kind of ties into something that I said last episode, where you asked what I forget exactly what you asked, but my answer ended up being get your head out of your ass. And that's basically what I had to do with myself, because I sat, especially in my mid to the second half of my 20s, I really sat there at a point with a lot of envy and coveting, mm-hmm. like we discussed in the last episode. And when I realized that nobody's coming to help me, and I could either submit to that fact and just let myself wither away into oblivion, or am I going to hunker down and am I going to put my ass to the grindstone, and am I just going to keep busting my ass in order to get there? And I will say this, taking the route of where I'm going to put that effort into that work, mm-hmm. it's very gratifying, I will say, and I have a much better outlook on it. And that's why now I can sit there and say, like, yeah, why I say I don't need much is because I've realized that I don't. Right. And I have the skill and ability to do the hard work. And I have now I guess you could say finally now have the confidence to take some risks and pursue other stuff like podcasting, even a few other things. Like I remember I mentioned to you last time about maybe you should look into writing a book. Even I'm putting some time, investing some time into doing something like that, because I've had ideas and I was like, you know what? My ideas aren't doing shit until I put them on paper. So, I mean, there's no guarantee, and there's never a guarantee that, I mean, it's a risk that I'm taking, but I'm appreciative for that opportunity to be able to do something like that, which is what I think, and to me, what the American dream is what it really centralizes is what did our forefathers fight and die for to give us the opportunity to do, to be able to live life and succeed based off of what effort you are willing to put in. And that is what I'm looking at as my American dream. The opportunity is there. I just got to take it. And there's nobody that's going to be no government at the very least, that's going to help me through it. I'm blessed to have someone like you that can help me at the least of maybe providing some technological expertise and knowledge and whatnot. But when it comes to getting there, the only one that can do it is me. Mm-hmm. It took with all this, let's be honest, it really took me kind of giving you a little nudge to be like, hey, when are you thinking about doing this again? In order for this whole thing to spark. I mean,
wow.
I know you were thinking about it, but
I thought you were nudging me for, well, what are you doing? How come you're not doing it? I didn't know you were interested until very recently.
Well, I mean, yeah, I did have some ulterior motives.
Well, how long did it take from when you said that to where we're sitting here today?
Shit, like a matter from the time that we had that discussion to the time where we made our first film attempt, probably a week.
Okay, so I think that that's a little tip for anyone out there. Fathers. I mean, men in general, especially men who've been fathers and husbands, ask for help. We don't want to ask for help, okay? But if we say, hey, would you help me with something? Most of the time, your father is going to want to do it for you. If you say, hey, fix this for me, I'm going out. I want you to come to my house and fix this for me. You might not get that done. But if you say, hey, I want to learn how to do this. Can you help me? Can you show me? I mean, you're going to get action out of that.
Right. And just
we live for that stuff.
To appease a little bit of the progressives out there, it's not just for us men. For those of you that have daughters, literally, for the ladies that are watching this, however many or few that might be, ask if you want to try to accomplish something, just go out there and ask. Don't ask them to do it for you, but maybe ask them to be like your consigliere, advise you.
Right.
That's kind of like what I've done with you. It's pushed you to want to pursue stuff of your own as well. But now it's a great project that we can work together on, and we can both grow from it.
It's one dynamic. If you go to an older guy and you say, tell him what's wrong. You tell him, he's wrong and you're right, and complain and say all these things. You're going to get one response from that. And it's pretty much going to be a pushback. It's pretty much going to be, let's argue, let's debate, let's talk. Or I don't like to argue and debate, so I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to nod my head, and you're going to walk away, and I'm going to move on with my life. Mm-hmm. That's the response you're going to get. But if you have any form of relationship with someone like that, and you ask them about something that they're interested in, something that they have a skill in, and you just sort of ask them about that, engage them, show interest. At some point say, well, you think you could teach me any of that stuff? I'd love to learn that. So maybe could you help me if I were to? I'm telling you, if you ask a man that and he doesn't respond, then just find another one. Go ask another one, because they're out there.
There's always somebody out there that is looking to mentor somebody.
Especially when we're older. I mean, we raise kids, and now you guys are adults and gone, and we're like, we can't be pushy and we can't intervene. So, we let you be an adult and we do our thing. But, I can tell you, when you have adult kids, the best thing in the world is when one of your adult kids calls you and says, hey, I need your advice on something. Or, hey, you can ask for advice. You don't have to do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You get that perspective. But also help. Again, if it's, help me dig a ditch, I mean, you might not get a whole lot of excitement out of that. But if you say, hey, I need to do some wiring. I know you know electrical. And, if you say, come fix my outlet for me, it's less motivating. If you say, hey, I want to learn how to do this stuff, can you come and help me so I can learn? It's a whole different dynamic. Mm-hmm. It's because I'm getting something out of it now.
Yeah. It's kind of in a humorous way, kind of segueing back to one thing you said before. For those that can't teach, you're reaching that age in life where physically being able to do something is becoming more difficult, but you can teach the best of them.
YouTubes can be very helpful. Okay. But for say home improvements or even car work, there's very few YouTube videos showing the basics, like how to use a tool, how to use a wrench or a screwdriver without stripping out the bolt or the screw. What happens if it's rusted? What happens if something breaks? What happens if I screw it up? You can't get that off of YouTube. But if you ask somebody who knows what they're doing, who's been there, then that's the little extra confidence and help that you can get.
So I think a great way we can kind of summarize everything we've talked about is I can summarize the American dream as this. It's almost similar to that of the carousel of progress. You are in the time that you are now, looking to try to find a ways to better yourself and those around you. Mm-hmm. And you lean on those that came before to give you not the actual labor to get there, but the knowledge of what you need to do to get there. Mm-hmm. And then you do the work. And then once you are in the old person position, you can then pass down that knowledge onto the next generation who is trying to find their way in the world. Yeah. And I would say I could not come up with a better definition of the American dream. And the only, I guess, I would say the best way to keep that going is really just maintain the right attitude about it and not try to become dependent on someone or something like a government to do it for you.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the things we haven't done is gone into anything real kind of hands-on practical. Okay. So let's talk about home ownership. So one of the problems that's happening is, because of inflation, interest rates have gone up. Mm-hmm. That's the Fed does these things. So interest rates are higher now. So what's happening is people that already own a home, if you've got a 2-3% interest rate, why would you ever sell that home? I mean, don't even pay it off. You're crazy because you could take the money that you would pay off the home and you could invest that in something else. Mm-hmm. Basically you have cheap money. So if people don't want to sell their homes, that reduces the inventory, the supply, and that contributes to the increasing home values. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that happened this year, and it was a bipartisan thing, I forget the name of it, but a law was passed that says these institutional investment firms, these large corporations that invest in homes, they're also buying up homes, driving up values and things. Mm-hmm. They buy cash. So, if you have a young person even if they have the down payment, they can't compete against these cash offers. Anyway, the law bans them from buying, entry-level one-family homes. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be able to buy those anymore. That doesn't immediately change anything, but that sets it up for, the future. One thing to remember, the advantages that older people have, those didn't happen overnight either. Okay, so they bought their homes. Interest rates when we were coming up when I was younger, they were like 16%. I think our first house, we paid 12% interest on the house. You do the math on a 30-year mortgage, 15 if you're rich, you do the math on that, and you look at how much that increases your monthly payment, even for a small home. So even at 6%, it's still high. It's still too high as far as relative to the people that are already own the properties. The problems don't happen overnight, and the solutions aren't coming overnight. No. One of the things that caused the stock market to be so high, when I got my first job, adult real job in like 1984, I think it was, or 3. They told us there was 401k. It had only been around like 5 years. They said Social Security will be bankrupt long before you turn of age. There will not be any Social Security. So you need to start a 401k. That's when we learned about IRAs. That's when they taught us about mutual funds were the things back then. So you need to set aside a portion of your income, tax free, goes into this account, and it makes money on the stock market. That pushed all of us into the stock market. Mm-hmm. Everybody. When you have so many people in the stock market, it tends to drive the prices up. Mm-hmm. So, the 401k and the IRAs, the 401k, they say was originally intended for the high income people, like the senior level managers and things that made so much money that Social Security was not going to be enough for them. So it gave them a way to save. But, of course, it's a tax law, so it applied to everybody. So they started pushing it off on their employees. Now, there's a cynical view that, by getting the employees to contribute, that made the fund viable so that the higher ups could enjoy it too. So that may be part of it. But the point is, that's what drove this to where we are now with this high valued stock market and why so many people had made money. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen overnight. College debt is a big problem. When, they say, look, boomers only had to pay $3,000 to go to college or something like that. True. That's true. But what did boomers also do? They said, okay, we want our kids, we want college to be affordable for everybody, because even at those low tuition rates, not everybody could afford it, right? We wanted to make college affordable. Everybody wanted their kids to go to college. Mm-hmm. So we created all these government programs, the FAFSA, the student loans, grants. It's all administered by the government, and it's given to the colleges themselves. So the ones giving you financial advice are basically the seller of the product. It transformed the university system. Now colleges all have these huge finance departments. They're run like a business. Supply and demand. What did it do to college tuition? Drove it through the roof. So you want to blame boomers? The mistake that the boomers made was wanting everybody to have a college degree. Mm-hmm. Okay. What else did that do? Not only did it raise the price of tuition, it devalued the degree themselves. Back when a small minority of people went to college, those degrees had some value. Now that everybody has them, and there's a bunch of degrees out there that really don't translate to any marketable skill, a bachelor's degree is almost worthless. So that didn't happen overnight. It had good intentions, but that's what can happen. So bad things don't happen overnight. That's one of the cautionary tales of government getting involved. Now we've created this problem, and they say, well, what are we going to do? They would say, well, we're going to do student debt forgiveness. Well, how about you do something to somehow get the college tuition back down again? How about you change the FAFSA program to help advise families to say, what do you want to study? Oh, you want to study botany? You're not going to make any money in botany, okay? This is what it's going to cost you to get that degree. Can your family handle this, or are you going to be saddled with that debt for the rest of your life? That's what needs to happen. If the demand for college degrees go down, then the cost will start to come down too.
I think it's interesting how we segued from a talk about defining the American dream into this discussion on economics.
Well, but it is economics, don't you think? I mean the whole American dream is about opportunity in the life you want to build. All the complaints, all the problems are economic. I can't afford to buy a house. Mm-hmm. I don't make enough money to pay my bills and get a car. Everything's too expensive. That's what it's all about. And the top problems, the top socialist promises are free health care, free college tuition, we'll pay off your student debts. Oh, and we'll give you free child care so you can both go to work.
Mm-hmm. So it really kind of feels like what you can boil down, like from what you just went on explaining. One thing that could I guess, protect the American dream itself is realize again that you got to delay gratification for one, because the problems have a root cause that took a while to get there, and the solution's going to be the same way. Two, you cannot rely on someone or something doing it for you, like the government. And basically, if you're able to do that, and as well as take the opportunity to apply yourself and bring some type of value into not only your life, but potentially the economy, everything's going to actually end up benefiting everybody in the long run. Mm-hmm. I think that's at least what I'm getting out of what you were just going on about.
That, I guess what I would say is, earlier you said, I'm busting my ass.
Yes.
I would say you don't realize your dreams. You don't support yourself just by busting your ass. You have to engage your head. Mm-hmm. The other thing you can't do, you can't accomplish anything by just indulging your feelings. Mm-hmm. If you feel, so what do feelings do? I mean, I really want something. So when someone promises to give me that for free, that feels really good. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then my brain goes, well, wait a minute. How do I get it for free? And then they say, well, look at the evil rich person over here. Don't worry, we're taking the money off of him. Ah, wow, that feels good too. But does it really make sense? Is that really how it's going to work out? And even if they ever do that, what's going to happen to your life between now and then? So I guess what I'm saying is engage your head, engage your ass, and be cautious about the feelings. I mean, feelings are important. They're always going to be. You don't have to focus on making your feelings take over. It'll naturally happen. So if anything, you have to focus on making good decisions, reasoning through the situation, and then working hard.
Basically being a free thinker.
Yeah. I mean, so what you want to buy a house. I can't afford the down payment. I can't afford the interest rate. Well, what can you afford? You may have to look at the places that you can afford to live, the types of houses. They may not be what you're envision. They're certainly not going to be what your parents have. Well, what about down payment? There's no way I can come up with a down payment. Well, I mean, you got zero down payment by serving 4 years in the military. Not everybody's going to want to serve 4 years. You can do reserves. You can do National Guard. There are FHA loans and things out there. So look for these avenues. If you do have family, avoid, if at all costs, avoid the credit card debt. And, when it comes time to buy a house, a lot of families, a lot of parents and things will help you out, with that down payment, the ones that can. So, instead of, saying, I'll never afford, go to your parents, say, I'll never afford a house. I'll never afford a house. I'll never afford a house. I can tell you what parents are looking for. They want to see you working for it. They want to see you working hard and doing everything that you can. So do that. And then if you go to your parents and go, look, I think these kind of houses are in my price range. I've got my budget. I've avoided creating debt. I'm actually in a position where I think I can afford it, and it would be cheaper than paying rent. But I don't have the down payment. Mm-hmm. If you could just help me with the down payment. It's like a business proposition to your parents. Treat it like that. You don't go if you want people to invest in your business plan. First you have to have a plan, but they have to believe it. They have to believe in your plan, and they have to believe in you. You don't just go to somebody and go, hey, I want to start a business. Give me money. They're not going to give you any money. And, I think with your parents, it's the same thing. They want to see that what they're doing, you're doing the right things. You're on the right trajectory. We're going to help you, and you're going to take it to the next level, and you're going to run with it. Mm-hmm. That I think is more. So that sort of thinking. I don't have enough money to put into the stock market. Again, it's going to come back to these high interest debts. I mean, look at how much, if you're paying 20 and 28% for interest on debts, you're losing your ass. That's slavery. You got to focus on paying that stuff off. Mm-hmm. At the same time, don't think that you have to start investing with large sums of money. You don't. Do micro investing, because something's going to happen. I mean, if you invest in a, S&P 500 index fund, the market has been doing really, really well. We're due for a major correction. We could see an easy 30% or plus, correction. It doesn't matter if that's money you're investing for the long term anyway. As a matter of fact, if you're putting money in on a regular basis and it tanks, keep putting money in. Put a little bit more in, because guess what? It's the same as if housing prices were really high and then they tank. Do you want to buy the house when it's expensive, or would you rather wait for it to tank?
I'd personally wait for it to tank.
If you already owned the house and it tanked, are you going to sell it after it tanks? No, you're going to stay there. You're stuck now. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how you have to treat the stock market. So, you should have an emergency fund. It shouldn't necessarily be in the stock market, But I know this sounds like a lot, and it's like this guy's dreaming. He's out of his, but it's just, it's the things you have to be thinking about, and it's baby steps. It really is. Mm-hmm. Then something I read about, they called it loud budgeting. Are you familiar with the term?
No, but I feel like I know where you're going to go with this, but go on.
Loud budgeting is where you're out with your friends and they say, hey, let's go do this. You go, I can't. I'm saving my money. It's not in my budget. I can't. Throughout history, nobody wants to admit that they can't afford something. Everybody wants to pretend it's an ego thing. They want to pretend like they can afford everything that their friends can afford. Well, a lot of times your friends are spending beyond their means anyway. But, the reality of it is you don't even have to say I can't afford it. You can say, I have plans for my future. I need this money. I'm investing. Whatever it is. I'm saving for a house. So that's what they call loud budgeting, is where you don't let your peer pressure, your friend pressure push you into spending money that you really shouldn't spend. Mm-hmm. And apparently it's a trending thing. So if you say it, there's going to probably be more people that, that you're around that will say the same thing. Yeah, you're right. Let's go do something cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Or of no cost whatsoever.
Yeah. Let's hang out.
So I guess it really boils down to, at the end of the day, if you want to achieve the American dream or your version of it, you got to make smart decisions. You got to think, and you got to be willing to put in the work.
And have a plan.
Have a plan.
I mean, trust me, I know it's tough. When you're underwater, you can't breathe. And, but you got to put together a plan, trust in the process, and it's good, like what you started with, how you said that, you just want to value time with family and time with it. Do things like that don't cost anything.
Exactly. And like that's even my plan whenever I get some of my own debt situation figured out is I've learned to not live in excess because I've been focusing on paying on my debt, that I've realized that, I don't need to be spending this money anyways. And once I'm able to get that paid off and that all that extra money just starts coming in, I'm just going to save it, invest it, put it towards whatever. And I mean, it's unfortunate that I've had to go through the process of knowing what it's like to be underwater that bad. But at the same time, I feel like there's no better teacher than adversity.
Yeah, that's true. You definitely learn from adversity and your mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And that's also another thing of the American dream. You have the ability to make mistakes and come back from it. So I think it's a good way of really putting through the American dream. And as long as people, like I said, are able to put in the work and make those smart decisions and at least think. And if you have a hard time figuring out, there's people out there that can guide you in the right direction. Then I think the American dream will stay safe and alive for a lot longer than some people might make it out to be, as long as you don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, on that last point, I can't stress that enough, is change the conversations you're having, with the family, people in your life, and, get out of that, debate mode and get more into, let's just just talk. I need some help.
I think that sounds like a good place to wrap it up. So, do you have another question for us to end us on today?
All right, so we kind of talked about fathers, because I'm a father, and how to interact maybe in a more constructive way, where you get them to cooperate and help you. So we call the podcast no contact, or I'm sorry, we call the podcast full contact, full contact families, because we're family and we're engaging and we're not avoiding one another. So I don't know, maybe question would be, what do you think the state of family, relationships is right now? Namely with adults, like adults to their parents and siblings.
I think it's an even 50-50. I'm fortunate enough to be on that side where I maintain a good full contact relationship with, at the very least, my immediate family. Some others maybe not so much, but everyone is unique in that regard. So I would say that it's 50-50. Maybe it might teetering on the other end depending on what social sources you're looking at.
Yeah.
But again, you said there's billions of people in this world, and it's going to be, I think you can honestly say it's a 50-50 split either way.
Okay, so in the United States, you think about half the families are on good terms, but they don't talk about it. It's not on social media. The other half, they're strained relationships, maybe low contact, no contact, and that gets a lot of social media.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we can talk about that next time. Talk about family dynamics.
Well, I mean, hey, we are a family podcast. Might as well talk about family on the next one. So thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Full Contact. Again, I am Dean. This is my father, Bob. Thank you for joining us. Please take the time to like, share, subscribe, do all the things to get the algorithm going in our favor. We really want to try to get this out to the masses, and hopefully everybody can enjoy it as much as at least I enjoy speaking to my old man about all this stuff. So again, thank you and have a great day.
Peace.
Deuces.